Good evening, everyone. This is your evening news recap, your nightly news podcast on all the news that I come across throughout the day, giving you my take as somebody who aspires to be a politician in the near future. Hopefully, all you guys are doing wonderful. Hopefully, all you guys are doing well. Today is September 18th, and it is Thursday. Hopefully, all you guys have had a wonderful week so far. My week is now over to me, or over for me, as you know, I get 3-day weekends for college, which is pretty lit. But, hopefully, all you guys are doing great, whether you're going to school, whether you're going to work, whatever you're doing. Hopefully you're doing well. It's been a very interesting day in the news world to say the least, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Outside of that, though, I'm doing pretty all right. If you're new here, please subscribe as we are on our way to 500 subscribers. Hopefully by the end of the year, and all the support would be greatly appreciated as we try to hit that goal. And if you're on Substack, please also consider subscribing, as all funds go to me. They help me pay for the things that I need to pay for in college, like my groceries, like clothing, like all of that. But if not, you can always subscribe for free. I truly do appreciate all forms of support. And with that being said, let's get into the news from today. Moving on into the Trump administration segment, as we do, the first topic we have is Trump has designated Antifa as a terrorist group. Trump has announced that he is designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. It's unclear when the designation will begin or what implications it will have. Antifa, which is short for anti fascist, is a group of mostly left leaning activists and generally isn't a highly organized group. Yet, Trump wrote on True Social, I am pleased to inform many of are USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist group. I will be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I didn't know being anti fascist was a terrorist, and I feel like that should be the exact opposite. But it's always something new with these guys in this administration every day. Is it shocking? Absolutely not. But it is absolutely some bullshit. That's for damn sure. Truly, like time and time again, day after day, week after week, it's always something else between this administration and some other bullshit. And, to say that a group that is actively against fascism as a whole, is a terrorist organization in your country really says a lot about your beliefs as an individual and your beliefs as a leader. If I was not in or if I witnessed this from another country, I would definitely think, yeah, they're fascist. And witnessing this now in my own country, I can sit here and think, yeah, they're fascists. And I feel like that's pretty obvious, in all honesty. In other news, Trump says that networks aren't allowed to criticize him. Trump has said that networks and late night shows should not be allowed to be critical of him. Trump was asked about the firing of Jimmy Kimmel on Air Force One as he returned from the United Kingdom and said, I read someplace that networks were 70 or 97% against me. Sorry. Again, 97% negative, and I won easily. I won all 7 swing states. The popular vote won everything. They're 97% against. They only give me bad press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. Trump later said, they're licensed and they're not allowed to do that. They are an arm of the Democratic Party. Trump basically said the only news that matters is the news that glazes me, essentially being Fox News, his only personal PR team, if you will, which would be a massive problem. That essentially undercuts all, unbiased news, all bipartisan news. That undercuts everything. You are free to say whatever you want about the president, and that has been the case since the presidency of John Adams after he arrested a bunch of people for speaking out against him. Thanks to John Adams for that one. But like he's not allowed to just say that people cannot criticize him. That is against all the beliefs of American politics. That is against all the beliefs of the founding fathers. That is against all the beliefs of the United States. What we're seeing here is an attack, a direct attack on our nation's freedom of speech, which must be stopped because that is against all things American. And I swear, if I hear a single comment saying that Joe Biden was attacking free speech, I'm gonna be upset. I'm gonna be a little upset because I if Joe Biden was attacking free speech, like he wasn't doing it this bad. He was not, telling people they would lose their jobs because of talking against him. He was not, you know, uh, fucking people over for criticizing him or the people around him. Like That is not something that was the case, and that never will be the case, except for Trump. Like, this is something Trump is doing. This is not something Joe Biden did. And I know I'm going to get comments that said Joe Biden, attacked freedom of speech when he didn't. In other news, talking about Charlie Kirk, military leaders are considering a Kirk recruitment campaign. Pentagon leaders are considering a recruitment campaign that would encourage young people to join to honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk. One possible slogan the Pentagon leaders have discussed using is Charlie has awakened a generation of warriors. The Pentagon is considering using Turning Point USA and other parts of Kirk's life in schools across the country for the purposes of military recruitment. I think most Americans at least have had the experience of military recruiters coming to their school, walking around, and all the gear and such. It's a very common thing here, and I don't know if that's a common thing in other countries. I would be surprised if it was. It really seems like an American thing only. But if you're from another country, let me know. I know I do have a lot of um, viewers from other countries. I guarantee you it's not a thing in Germany. I can say that much. They're not really allowed to be very nationalistic there, which is a smart thing to some degree. And I do have a lot of German viewers, so I, do know that much to say the least. But um, overall, I've been to these meetings for stuff, and I've been to all the meetings for, you know, joining the military, and I have considered joining the military before. I almost joined the Marines, I almost joined the National Guard, I almost joined the Air Force. Those were the three branches that I considered joining. Of course, I didn't. Now I'm in college. But going to those meetings, you can really tell that they're very filled with propaganda. It makes it sound like the military is such a great thing, and they do so many great things, and they make the benefits sound so great. When in reality, it's not the case. Whether it's seen historically, or whether it's even now, where the National Guardsmen in D.C. were pulled out before they got all of their benefits for being there for 30 days. You're just not going to get that as a member of the U.S. military, as much as they fill these presentations with propaganda and make it seem like you will. You're really not going to. And unfortunately, most Americans won't be smart enough to recognize that this is propaganda, which shouldn't be the case. But, unfortunately, most people don't recognize when their own country is spilling out propaganda. In other news, talking about Jimmy Kimmel, Sinclair has demanded Kimmel donates to Kirk for his show back. Sinclair, the largest US ABC affiliate in the US, said that the network did not do enough to reprimand Jimmy Kimmel for his comments about Charlie Kirk. The company announced in a press release that it the demands that Kimmel would have to fulfill if he wanted to be on air once again. Those demands include a direct apology to Charlie Kirk's family, a meaningful personal donation to Kirk's family and Turning Point USA, and the appropriate steps taken to uphold the standards expected of the national broadcasting platform. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing this if I was Jimmy Kimmel. I'm going to be completely honest, and I don't think he will either. It is honestly so dumb. It really is. And there is no reason for Jimmy Kimmel to have to apologize when he literally did nothing. He is a news broadcaster. He is going to share an opinion as a comedian slash news broadcaster. That's what they do. And, from what I remember, he was pretty unbiased. Like, until this administration, he was not some super biased person who was going to go, shitting on, the right for everything. No, that wasn't the case. He basically did nothing. And I'm sure if he really wants to, he has enough money to retire and, live a good life and live very comfortably for the rest of his life. And if not, he can start a YouTube channel and probably be successful, if not even more successful. Like, he does not need ABC. He does not need a giant platform. There are many ways to be a successful voice within, the media without having, a job on a TV station, or, a job on a radio station. Things like this. What the video that you're watching now is me being a media personality, if you will. And Jimmy Kimmel could do this exact thing that I'm doing right now and probably be very successful and probably do it, you know, way more professionally than I ever could. In other news, a House Oversight Committee is launching an investigation into ABC Robert Garcia, a California representative, has announced he is launching an investigation into ABC's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. His probe will review the Trump administration, ABC, and this TV station owner of Sinclair for what he calls efforts to censor opposition. Garcia said in a statement, "Every American has the duty to stand up for our first American values. We will not be silenced as our freedoms are threatened by corrupt schemes and threats. Anyone who is complicit will need to answer to us." Robert Garcia has been doing great work to fight this entire thing, really throughout this entire administration. And I really applaud him for it. It's nice to see that someone from California is continuously combating tyranny other than Gavin Newsom. And you know what makes it even better? He doesn't take money from APAC either. What a legend, truly. I'm glad that someone from California can not only be so based to do that, but also, work to fight against the Trump administration at the same time. So, round of applause for Mr. Robert Garcia. What a legend. I'd love to meet him one day. Maybe when I go back to California, I can kind of figure that out. In other news, U.S. Facts did an installation at the Washington Monument. A giant 50-foot bunch of inflatable bananas was on the U.S. Washington Monument grounds as organizers call for reliable data. USA Facts, a nonpartisan group that exists to make government data easier to access and to understand, funded this and announced it on their website. Devin Savage, the director of marketing at USA Facts, said in a statement, "When something familiar appears out of proportion, we notice it right away. But in today's news cycle, distorted politically headlines often slip past us without question. This activation shows how data can restore clarity and give people the tools that they need to make informed decisions about issues shaping their lives." What a way to make a statement. And in all honesty, you could really say that this administration really is bananas. Sorry. Especially when it comes to, what they claim to be facts and, the claims that they make. Honestly, I didn't know much about USA Facts before this, and I didn't even really know that they were a thing. But I will definitely be using them as one of my sources going forward. From what I found over a few articles from doing research today, they're good for when it comes to the facts on information, and when it comes to finding resources. This is not a full-on endorsement, so don't take it as that. But if you're still looking for sources that are going to give you facts rather than being biased, USA Facts, seems like a good source from what I've read so far. In other news, moving on into our final topic tonight, a man has been arrested for terrorist threats against Soron Mondami. Authorities in New York have charged a Texas man for making terroristic threats against Soron Mondami over voicemails and written messages sent to the NYC mayoral candidate. District Attorney Melinda Katz, sorry, said in her ruling, the defendants told the assemblyman to go back to Uganda before someone shoots him in the head, to keep an eye on his house and his family, to watch his back every second until he leaves America, and that he and his relatives deserve to die. Let me be clear, we take threats of violence against any office holder extremely seriously, and there is no room for hate or bigotry in our political discourse. Jeremy Fistel, the culprit, has been charged with 22 counts for which he could spend 15 years in prison for if convicted. Good. I don't want to hear any threats on the people who want to build our country into a better and more positive future. I think Mom Dami will absolutely be extremely important when it comes to developing socialism as a whole in the United States. And I'm excited to see him, become the mayor of New York City and to watch him grow with the city and to watch him make the city an overall better place and to prove that socialism can not only work in the United States, but actually help people and be efficient, especially with these city-owned grocery stores. I think that is such a good thing. Like I am so excited to watch what he does when he becomes mayor, and I really hope he wins that race. And if he were born here, I would say that he would make a great president of the United States one day as well. But unfortunately, he cannot. But hey, I'm gonna do that. So make room for me. With that being said, though, thank you all for watching today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. It has definitely been an interesting one in the news worlds, that's for sure. Outside of that, though, hopefully all you guys are doing well. If you are new here, please consider subscribing as we are on our way to 500 subscribers, and all the support would be greatly appreciated as we try to hit that goal, hopefully by the end of the year. Outside of that, though, if you're on Substack, please also consider subscribing as all funds go to me. They help me pay for the things that I need to pay for in college, like food, like groceries, like all of that. But if not, you can always subscribe for free. I truly do appreciate all forms of support on this content. It means the world to me that so many of you continue to watch my episodes day after day and to continue to show love and support. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. You guys are goated. You guys are amazing. And have a good one. I will see you all tomorrow. Later.